The most important thing to know is how much money is going to be required to source your product and be successful with it. Now, assuming that you've done everything else, you validated this is a great idea, one of the most important things, you got to have money to do it. So we're going to go over that calculation now. Stick with it through the end. It's not that hard, actually. You just have to put a couple of things in. All right, so we're just going to assume that you have at least 150% ROI and 60-day lead time total. So these are pretty low requirements, okay? This calculation will work out. If you have less than 100% ROI or larger than 60-day lead time, you're going to need more money. And we got other video talking about that, how to calculate this exactly, but this is to get a rough estimate. So you're going to need to know your profit per unit and also the CPA, your cost per acquisition. So what does that mean? Well, first of all, profit per unit, let's cover that. Well, whatever you're going to sell it for, minus the price per unit, that includes shipping, minus the Amazon fees. So for this, okay, so to calculate the Amazon fees, you could use the Viral Launch calculator in the Chrome extension, or you could use the Amazon FBA calculator by just Googling that. Okay, your price per unit, obviously you'll find that out in the next section where we go about sourcing. But yeah, just basically you're going to need shipping and the cost of the unit. And then you're going to need the sales price. Okay, so if you're wondering where to choose your price, I always try to go higher than lower. If you're wondering what price to sell it for, we have a video on that. So CPA, why is this important? Okay, because we don't talk about using launches. And initially, when you put your product on Amazon, you need to get it to rank. And Amazon gives you a nice little grace period in the beginning, but they're not going to give you completely free traffic and put you at the top of the page. You have to pay for that. And so we buy ads, okay? And the way that you calculate this is we need to know our cost per click. So basically on Amazon, you're just paying when people click on your ad, not every time they see it, okay? And cost per click, you can figure that out with Viral Launch, or you could go make a dummy product on Amazon and see what the suggested bid is there. And your conversion rate, what is that? That's essentially basically every time someone clicks, how many clicks does it take to get them to buy? So if let's just assume about a 20% conversion rate, because that's good on Amazon. So that means for every 5 people that click on your listing, 1 buys, because Amazon has a very high conversion rate. If your conversion rate is way lower than 20%, that means it's not the keyword for you. Or your product just needs to be, you need to improve your images or something, or your product's just not good enough and people don't like it. But we're assuming that you've differentiated and we're choosing good keywords, which we teach later in the course. So we're going to assume that you get about a 20% conversion rate. So let me just do the math quick, okay? So let's say that it costs 40 cents a click and you have a 20% conversion rate. This ends up being $2. So it costs us $2 per sale if the click were 40 cents. If it were 80 cents, it would cost us $4 a sale, and so on. Okay, so now we're going to calculate our advertising per unit. All right, so this is basically going to be the profit per unit minus the CPA, which is that one up there. So essentially, in theory, you don't need any money for advertising. If you have cheap enough ads and you make enough per unit, you don't even need any money for advertising, because Amazon only charges you every 14 days for advertising and you get paid every 14 days. So if you're selling and you're making $5 a unit, but it costs you $4 a unit or something, well, then you made $1. So you don't actually need any money for advertising. So this is the way that the math works. So we will now move on into the rest of the calculation. So this was just the calculation to calculate essentially what it was going to take for advertising part of your launch. Let's assume that the math was different, okay? Before we move on, let's assume that it costs $7 a sale, okay? So if our CPA was $7, then now it costs $2, okay? We are actually spending $2 more than we make to make the sale. We're gonna assume that it costs $7 to get a sale, and we only make $5. And you want to lose money. Well, you don't want to lose money, but you need to lose money in most markets to get ranking, because when we get to the top of a keyword, now Amazon's giving us all those free organic sales. And that's what's so great about Amazon, is they bring us the customers. So we have to pay to rank up there, and then over time we make a bunch of money. So now how much do you need in total for advertising? Okay, so the total advertising cost is going to be this advertising cost per unit, which is that $5 minus 7, so it's going to be $2. So we're going to say $2 multiplied by, well, how many sales do we need to get per day? Okay, so we're just going to assume that we're ranking on a bunch of keywords here, and we're going to try to match what our competitor's doing for a whole week. Okay, so if our competitor's selling 300 sales a month, they're selling 10 units a day. Okay, so we would need to sell 10 units a day. So sales per day of our competitor is 10, and then we multiply that by 7 because we need to sell for at least 1 week as much as they are. So if we lost $2 a sale and we have to sell 10 units a day, then we're going to spend and lose $20 a day, and then we multiply that by 7. So our advertising ad spend here would be $140, okay? So obviously, if you have to sell more units to rank, so if the sales of the competitor were higher, it would cost more. And if the cost per click and the ad spend were really high, it costs more. But this is the way that the math works out, okay? So I suggest when you're starting, you go towards a less competitive market, because then this advertising ends up being a lot lower than if you're going and trying to go up against someone who's selling like 3,000 to 10,000 units a month, because this number gets really high and the cost per click, essentially, if you're going to a competitive market, this cost per click is high. And the conversion rate, your conversion rate might even be lower. And you're going to have to sell a ton of units. So let's just assume that it was $140 here, okay? So the total cost here is going to cost, well, you need to look at the number of units per month. So if our competitor was doing 300, we're going to say 300 to match them because we want to be selling as much as they are. All right? And then now the cost per unit with the shipping included. So our cost per unit is going to be $3. Okay, and we're assuming that the competitor is selling 300 units a month. So now we would go into the lead time. Now, if our lead time was 60 days, that would be 2 months. And we would now add 1. Why do you add 1? Because essentially, you want to have more units, because if our lead time was 2 months, then we would have to reorder right when it gets to the Amazon warehouse. And well, that's not good. You don't want to have to do that. We want instead an extra month of sales, because when that 1 month, with that extra month, we don't have to reorder until we've been selling for a month. And we should have sold a whole month of inventory and then made back our money then. So we have another month to spend there, and then now we have an additional month, and so we can reorder another 2 to 3 months, and then we don't have to spend any more money because we can reorder with the profits that we've made. Okay, so that's why you do the number of your lead time in months plus 1. Now, if you have a shorter lead time, you don't have to order as much, so it requires less money. So if you want to learn more about that, go watch the lead time video. So if you want to learn more about that, go watch the lead time video. So now this is 3. So we have 3 months of inventory. We have $3 a unit, and we have 300 units a month. Okay. Now our advertising cost we had determined was going to be what, $140? Might be a little bit higher because you're not always going to advertise on the perfect words, but some will be cheaper, some will be more expensive. Let's just say 200, assuming that we didn't do it perfectly. Okay, then now you're going to add in photos. So for photos, you're going to need about $400 to $500 if you do it with lifestyle and infographics and really, like that. Or you could go cheaper. It depends on how competitive the market it is and, how really in depth. But I mean, bare minimum, you're going to need like $250. Don't try taking them yourself because the photos are the most important part of your listing. So you really need to get this done well. So let's just assume about $400. So if it costs $3 a unit, but if you're going to sell 300 units a month and you had a 60-day lead time and it was $3 a unit, so now this is 300 times 3. This would be $900 multiplied by 3. So this would be 900 right there. Okay, then now times 3, that's equals 2,700. And then right here, this would be plus 200 plus that's 600 right there, plus 600. So this would be 3,300. So obviously, So this would be the total amount needed if we were selling 300 units a month. It costs $3 per unit. There was 60-day lead time, and we never wanted to go out of stock. We had, everything above. So that's essentially what it would cost to get something going. Obviously, the lower the cost per unit, the faster the lead time, and the less cost on ads is going to make all of this a lot less. So if you can find some markets that don't require too much per unit and have a really fast lead time, the lead time is really the key to reducing the amount of money required here. And that's why I've always gotten after things that have a really fast lead time. If you only have $3,300, you got to be really, really, really sure on that market if you're going to put it all into one product, or go after what I suggest, go after something smaller at first, okay? It's something with a huge ROI that could pay off massively. Like we showed before, those wristbands, I think the max investment was like $900, and it turned out to make like $40,000 in 2 years. So it's just massive. And then had a really fast lead time and everything. It was really easy to go into. So always start small and go larger. Don't put all of your money into one thing, and really do your research. And it's definitely possible. I know a lot of people that have done this. And let me know if you guys have any questions or want me to explain this any more in depth. But this will really set you up for success, and you'll never go out of stock with this. You can really, this is just a very accurate picture of what it would take to get something going. So let me know if you guys have any questions. On to the next video.